Eve's POV. Standing at the altar dressed in an expensive wedding gown with your beloved husband is the wish of most ladies. For me, I never got the opportunity to wear an expensive wedding gown or even stand beside my beloved husband. I was standing beside a wrong man, a total stranger who does nothing but frown and glower. I wasn't wearing a wedding gown, let alone an expensive one. I was dressed in a simple red gown my tailor made at the last minute. I didn't even get a bouquet of flowers to go with it, just some strands of overly old synthetic flowers. Do you, Eves Jameson, solemnly declare to take Jackson Coleman as your lawfully wedded husband? I stared straight at the officiating ministers as he uttered these words. I never thought and believed that I would be getting married to a man I barely know, a man that I had just met 2 days ago. I was silent for a few seconds. Do you, Eves Jameson, solemnly declare to take Jackson Coleman as your lawfully wedded husband? The officiator asked again. This time I felt my heartbeat beat faster. I was a little shaky and I turned round to the hall to stare at my only family, my mom and dad. Eve, speak up, my dad said in a hushed tone. I was very much aware that the marriage will benefit my family and I the most. Although I was rushed to marry Jackson, who I barely knew anything about, I was bent on giving in for the sake of my poor parents. I tried my best to swallow the lump on my throat before uttering the words I have been long scared of saying. Yes, I do. I replied with a fake smile on my face. I had to smile. It was the best way to avoid suspicious glances from the people eagerly staring at Jackson and I as we exchanged our marital vows. That's my daughter, my father shouted excitedly. I turned to stare at my excited family. Of course I had to smile at them. I had to do this. The officiator turned to John. Do you, Jackson Coleman, solemnly declare to take Eve Jameson as your lawfully wedded wife? Yes, I do, Jack replied with a cold look on his face. I was certain that he never wanted the wedding just like me. My parents became more excited. Who wouldn't be happy to be in-laws with the family that has the biggest tech company in the country? The officiator smiled. Please face each other. Jack pulled out a wedding ring from his pocket. I could tell that he wanted us to get over the wedding as soon as possible. Then he slowly slid the ring into my finger. I reached for his hand and slid in the cheap wedding ring I bought earlier, and it fit perfectly. I stared at the beautiful wedding ring he bought for me and the cheap wedding one I could only afford. A pang of guilt suddenly hit me. It would have been better if I didn't buy any at all because he stared at the ring dejectedly. We stared at the officiator as Jack held my hands. I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may now kiss the bride. Kiss the bride, I said in my mind as I stared at the officiator. I turned to my parents who were already clapping their hands as getting married to a total stranger is not enough. They also expect me to be kissed by him. I heaved a sigh. There wasn't need to get perturbed. We were married after all. I forced a smile on my face as I watched him lean in and place a quick kiss at the edge of my lips. My heartbeat quickened as he let go of me. I guess a quick kiss doesn't mean much after all. We turned to our family, who were super excited. Congratulations. I wish you both a happy married life, the officiating's voice broke out. I closed my eyes as I heaved a deep sigh. So that was it. I was officially married. Congratulations, Eve. My mom smiled as she hugged me. I could tell by her voice that she felt a bit sad that I was leaving. Jack wasn't interested. He didn't even look at my parents. He continued checking his wristwatch. Is everything okay? My dad asked. Yes, I need to collect the marriage certificate as soon as possible. Eve and I will be leaving for London first thing tomorrow morning. First thing tomorrow morning? My dad exclaimed. Apparently, he wasn't expecting my so-called husband to take me far away anytime soon. You heard me right, Clinton. Get the car ready, Jack said to his driver. I didn't like the way he spoke to my parents, but it looked like they didn't care. Are you on a business trip? My dad asked once again. Yes, Toby will be here to take you guys home in your new car. The other gifts are already at your home, John replied. Gifts and a car? My parents exclaimed happily. They were excited apart from me. It felt like I was being sold to John Forster. They were more excited about what they would get from him than getting me married to him. You can wait for me in the car. I'll get the certificate now, Jack said to me. I nodded my head. Mom and Dad, I guess we should be leaving now. Please greet Granny. I will visit soon, I said to them. A car? Oh my goodness. They were obviously not interested in what I was saying. They were more interested in the car and gifts. I heaved a deep sigh. Mom, I would be leaving now by... Oh, you're leaving already. There's no problem. Remember to be a good girl. Obey him and do everything you're told. Remember the benefit of this marriage. My father smiled at me. I nodded my head, then I hugged my mom gently. I walked out of the court to the car where Jack and his driver were already waiting for me. I could tell from Jack's facial expression that he wasn't happy with the wedding. I walked into the car. They were both silent, and I didn't utter a word either. I stared at the papers in Jack's hands. I knew that they were the marriage certificate. Jack threw the paper at me and I noticed that there were 2 papers instead of 1. That's our marriage certificate and also our marriage contract. You shall abide by whatever rule that is written there, he said. Then he instructed Clinton to take us home immediately. On our way home, I read through the contract. I was happy that our marriage won't interfere with our personal life. We just have to avoid getting into scandals. I was okay with the contract. My opinion doesn't matter anyway. Arriving at Jack's villa, we alighted from the car. It was the second time I was visiting his home, except that this time I wasn't coming as a guest. We walked into the mansion and I noticed that there was no one at home. It was just going to be the both of us in the house. Do I have to sleep in a different room from yours? I asked gently. He frowned at me. I know for sure that he doesn't like such an idea. Ma Grandma will start living with us from tomorrow. I do not want her to have any suspicions about our marriage, so we have to sleep together from tomorrow, but for today, we will both sleep in our separate rooms. I heaved a sigh as I walked into the room he said was mine. I knew for sure that the said room was the guest room. I have always wondered what an actual wedding night looks like. Having fun with your husband and being intimate with each other that very night. I guess my mind was filled up with lots of romantic tales I had read up in the past. I picked up the marriage contract to go through the rules once again. Suddenly I noticed that something was off with the 5th rule. No sex. Jack's POV. After a few months of struggling to get a wife for the sake of my company, it was finally over. But I still found it hard to believe I'm finally married. I heaved a deep sigh before reaching for the duplicate of the marriage contract. I read through the marriage contract. I guess there were few things that needed amendment in the contract, like the no sex rule. I know the reason for our marriage is for an heir for the company, but I don't love Eve and I will never think of having such an affair with her. I dropped the paper on my bed before laying down. I wondered how I'd face the clusterluck I had just created. I can't even hold a conversation with her. If not for the shareholders, I wouldn't have been in such a mess. 2 months ago. Boss, are you ready? The shareholders are already waiting for you in the office. Clinton said at the end of the call. I stared at my wristwatch. I was already late for the shareholders meeting. Get the car ready. We're leaving immediately. I replied before ending the call. I dressed in a tuxedo and black shiny shoes, which matched my outfit. I heaved a deep sigh before walking into the elevator. I knew for sure what the shareholder meeting was about. Those old folks just can't wait to remove me as the CEO of my father's company. Clinton was already waiting for me in the garage. I walked into the car and we zoomed off to the company. On our way to work, I noticed that Clinton was very silent, which is strange. He kept staring at me every now and then. What do you want to say? I asked, trying to break the silence. And not aurially. He stuttered. If you have anything to say, Just say it. I scowled at him. It's about the shareholder meeting. The board of directors wants you to get a wife as soon as possible. Clinton replied in a cold voice. I heaved a deep sigh. I knew for sure that was what he wanted to say. Don't worry about those old, hungry folks. I'll talk about that with them when we get to the office. I heaved a deep sigh. Arriving at the company, I stepped down from the car. The workers were ready, waiting for my arrival. They all bowed down to me as I entered the company. My secretary, Patricia, walked up to me immediately with some files in her hands. The board of directors and shareholders are already waiting for you. Everything is currently in total chaos. Patricia said, trying to catch up with me. Don't worry about them. As long as our company's profit is skyrocketing, I have no business with them. I replied, putting my hands in my pocket. I heard the noises inside the office as I walked in. The men were fighting amongst themselves. I have the largest share and I am the one who has the right to say what should be done. Jason should get married as soon as possible. That is the only way we can know we have an heir for the continuation of this company. There's no need for an heir right now. Jason is too young to worry about marriage. That was an argument between Mr. Tom and Mr. Holland. They've been arguing about this for the past few years. I don't actually care about what they say. I'm never getting married for reasons best known to me. Everyone silent. Allison yelled as we stood at the door. They all turned to me immediately, including the men and women. They stood up and greeted me immediately. I took a deep breath before walking to the podium. I sat on the seat provided for me. I had to address the issue going on. What is going on? Why is everywhere in chaos? I asked. Jackson, you need to get married. We need an heir for your father's company. At your age, your late father was already married. Mr. Tom said as he stood up. I nodded my head. He made a little sense, though. Jackson, you don't need to get married so quickly. You're still too young to worry about marriage. Tom just wants you to marry his daughter. Mr. Holland retorted. I stared at both of them. I knew for sure they never wanted anything good for me. Nobody in the company wants me alive. Mr. Tom wants my family's wealth while Mr. Holland wants me dead. That has always been their plan as rumored by Clinton. The shareholders were divided. Some supported Mr. Tom while others supported Mr. Holland. I decided we would cast a vote, and I really regret ever doing that. The majority of the people present supported Mr. Tom's. They really want me to get married as soon as possible. Jackson, you are given only 2 months to find a wife. If not, the company will be handed over to your step-siblings. Mr. Tom warned. As much as I don't want to get married, I think I'm more afraid of handing the company over to my worthless step-siblings who won't do anything other than to ruin it. 2 months. Patricia exclaimed. Everyone started murmuring too. Some considered 2 months was too small while some said it's still far. Nonetheless, I don't want to get married. Boss, 2 months is too close. Don't you think they should adjust it a bit? Patricia whispered in my ear. No, I don't think so. They should do whatever they want. I replied. Okay then. Patricia nodded her head. I cleared my throat to disrupt their noise. It's all right, in 2 months it is. But for now, we should concentrate on making profit from our latest investment with K&H Tech. The meeting finally came to an end. I arrived home, waiting for what would unfold in 2 months' time. Everyone was pestering me to get married, including my grandma and my mum. I guess at 29 they consider me old. I went on multiple blind dates organized by Patricia in the first month, but I liked none of the ladies. They were all the same. Ambitious ladies from rich families who were more interested in money than marriage. I kept rejecting all of them. I noticed that time was running out. The first half of the second month is almost gone, and I need a wife as soon as possible. I no longer have any choice now. I arrived from work late at night. I entered the bathroom to take my bath, but I noticed a sudden knock on my gate. I wondered who it could be because my security guard was on leave from work. He went to spend the weekend with his family. I walked out of the bathroom half naked. I only had my towel on my waist. I heard the knock once again. This time around it was too loud. I opened the gate immediately. Who are you and what are you looking for? I questioned with a frown on my face. I noticed it was a delivery girl. She dressed in a short gown and she had her delivery suit with her. She tied her hair in a ponytail and her glasses on the ridge of her nose. She kept staring at me with her eyes wide open. She was stunned at my sight. I never ordered anything. I retorted. "OH, I am truly sorry." She stuttered. I slammed the door without listening to her reply. The knock came again, this time very furious. "What the hell does this lady want?" I yelled. I turned to open the door. "I think this is the right address. This is Jackson's villa, right?" "This is the right address," she said as she pointed at the address on the package. I heaved a deep sigh. "Who is that package from?" I asked. "It says, Mrs. Jackson to Jackson." "I think this is a package from your..." The package mistakenly fell from her hands and hit the floor. The sound of a broken glass was heard. We knew for sure that the package inside it had broken. "I'm truly sorry about this. I didn't know when it fell off my hands." She cried as she bent to pick it up. She looked very clumsy. I sighed as I stared at her as she picked it up. The wristwatch and the wedding ring inside the package is an expensive one and a limited edition. My mom promised to send it from South Korea a few weeks ago. "I'm truly sorry. How can I pay back?" she asked as she held the broken package in her hands. I stared at her for a while. I think she would be of good use to me right now. I never wanted someone expensive. Someone clumsy and stupid would be of great use to me. I don't want to meet the expectations of the shareholders and my mother. "Marry me." Jack's POV. "You heard me right. Marry me," I retorted. The young lady kept staring at me. She was utterly speechless. "Sir, I don't think that's right. I don't even know you and this is our first meeting," she said, avoiding my gaze. "Yeah, that is the only way you can pay back for this. The item you just broke costs about $3 million. I bet you can never afford that." $3 million? She exclaimed. I nod my head. "I bet you cannot afford that even if you work for 2 years. I smirked. She clutched the tip of her gown tightly. She looked very nervous. "Is there no other option? I can't marry you. I mean, this is marriage, not a joke." She lifted her head. I stared at her for a while. She was very determined not to accept my proposal, but I knew something else that would work perfectly on her. Staring at her, I saw that everything she wore looked very cheap. "You don't want to marry me, right?" I smirked. "Yes," she replied in a cold voice. "Okay then, you can't afford $3 million and you also don't want to marry me. What if I pay you for acting as my wife? Our marriage won't last long, just 3 months, then we'll get divorced. How much will you pay me then?" she asked eagerly. I stared at her. I was quite confused by the change of her attitude. She's just like everyone else. They're all after the money. "Have you changed your mind?" "I didn't change my mind. I just want to know and also think about it. I have no intent dash." "I see. You have no intention to accept my offer, right?" I interrupted. She heaved a deep sigh. "Never mind. I did not accept your offer. Do I look cheap to you? I'm not the type of lady you can easily charm with your money." She scoffed as she folded her arms. "How about I pay you $30 million per month?" $30 million? I can easily pay off my family debt with such an amount. I chuckled gently. This interrupted her statement. "I see for sure that you are not the type of lady who is after my money. You said you have no intention of getting married to me, right?" "I didn't mean it that way. You said the marriage would last for 2 months, and then we'll get a divorce, right? I mean, it isn't a real marriage, and you'll also pay me for acting as your wife. So, I have no problem with that. She shrugged. I stared at her from her head to her toe. I knew that my mother and the shareholders at the company wouldn't accept her. They've always wanted me to get married to someone who is as wealthy as us, but I have no intention of doing so. Someone from a low class would be better for me. Hello, you aren't saying anything. She waved her hands around my face. I cleared my throat. I heard you right, but I think you don't deserve me. Huh? What do you mean by that? You were the one asking me to marry you on our first meeting, and now you've turned to say, "Good night, miss. You can keep the wedding ring and wristwatch with you." I slammed the door at her. I didn't want to act nice to her. I'm not nice anyway. Our marriage won't be an actual marriage, and I won't also fall for her. As long as I keep the company to myself, I don't care about anything else that happens after our marriage. I walked into the room and picked up my phone. I dialed Clinton's number immediately. Boss, why do you call me at this time of the night? It is getting too late. Clinton yawned. A young lady dressed in a delivery jacket just left my villa right now. Make sure you find her and give at least a sum of $10 million to her. $10 million? Clinton exclaimed. Yeah, you heard me right. Also, prepare some gifts that will be given to her parents tomorrow. Time is running out on us. I have to make her my wife as soon as possible. Your wife? A delivery lady? Clinton asked eagerly. Yeah, you heard me right. Good night anyway, and don't tell Patricia about this. I ended the call. Patricia wouldn't like the idea of me getting married to the young lady. I have to keep it from her and also use it as a form of surprise for her. I heaved a deep sigh. Our marriage would be in a few days, and I know very well that her parents would never say no to that. She talked about her parents being in debt earlier. The marriage would also be for her own benefit. I prepared for work the next day. Clinton had already found more details about the young lady. I walked into my garage. Clinton was already waiting for me in the car. What are the details you've gotten about her? I asked Clinton immediately as I entered the car. Clinton brought out a file. He handed it to me. The file contains her photo and other information about her. She comes from a very poor family. She's half American. I stared at the photo for a few seconds. She looks beautiful. I admired her curly hair the most. Did she accept the money? I turned to Clinton. Yeah, of course. At first, she was mad at me for the way you treated her, but she couldn't resist such an amount of money. Her parents are suffering from a huge debt. This is quite an opportunity for her to save her parents from such debt. You don't expect her to resist such an amount of money. Clinton replied. I nodded my head. You're right anyway. I'm glad you got the location of her parents. We should be heading there now. You need to get a lot of things ready. We also need to draft out a contract for our marriage. A contract marriage? Clinton exclaimed. Yeah, I will tell you what to write in it. As long as we abide by the rules, I think we're both fine. Can you tell me everything that is contained in the marriage contract? It was Clinton's voice. Find out what happened in the next episode of this hot tale. Do not forget to subscribe and turn the bell to get notified when I post the next episodes of this mind-blowing tale.